Let's say I did kill that chatty ass fool. What you gonna do about it, early?
Need to talk to you about Marvin Thomas.
Now for weeks, we've been talking about Marvin coming under heavy gunfire. We went through this specific teaser almost 3 weeks ago. At the time, we weren't sure whether it was episode 8, 9 or 10, where we see a red car coming under heavy gunfire, which only made sense for it to be Marvin's. Maybe this is early Tyler and his cousins, but we do know for sure, Unique is going to be coming for the Thomases. They're on the brink of an all-out war, and Marvin will definitely be in the thick of the action, as he always is. But Marvin has a lot more issues than just this one here, where he's coming under heavy gunfire. He's made a lot of mistakes in season 4. He's dug himself a big hole when it comes to the Italians. He's also made a huge mistake in not killing early Tyler. We all saw how that played out, which also ties in with Stefano and the Howard Beach situation. But more recently, in episode 409, he also killed Amber's foster parents. Not saying that they didn't deserve it, but you can't be strolling into a neighborhood and dropping bodies in broad daylight and leaving loose ends. One of these mistakes one day will definitely come back and haunt him, and is it that time? I'm still standing on my prediction that I don't think Marvin will die come the end of season 4. I definitely don't want anything to happen to Marvin, but in my opinion, he is skating on very thin ice. There's definitely a lot to unpack with Marvin's story arc. So, in this breakdown, we're going to be talking all things Marvin, the Amber situation, early Tyler and the Italians, and where does he go from here? How does the story end for Marvin come the end of Raising Kanan, season 4? Now let's talk about Amber, the situation with her foster parents, and how Marvin may have a loose end to worry about. Back in 403, when Richard and Sunny were killed, he went to the nephew's house because he was one of the main suspects. He learned about how Richard and Sunny had a young daughter, and how she's now left without any parents. It reminded Marvin of Amber. Back in season 3, Amber's sister Alice, she drowned while she was having a bath. Amber was then taken into foster care, and then Gerald died of an overdose. It was an absolute mess of a situation, which at the time, the FBI blamed on Marvin. But because of this situation with Richard and Sunny's daughter, Marvin reached out to early Tyler to see if he could use one of his family connections who works within the system to find out where Amber is. So when Marvin found Amber, he left his phone number, and this should have rang alarm bells. This was the clue to tell us this situation was always going to come back around, and it finally happened in episode 409. He got another little reminder of Amber while Rock was dealing with yet another mistake of his inside with Stefano. Again, we're going to come back around to it. But this made him go and check upon her at school, where she hasn't been seen for a few weeks. Her foster parents kept calling in to say she was sick, so he paid to get the address of Amber's foster parents from the security guard or teacher who was working at this school, and that's the loose end. We're going to come back around to that in just a moment. Now, when he came across these two pair of junkies, John and Rebecca, who I do think are married in real life just like Snaps and Pop. That's a bit of info if you didn't know about Snaps and Pop. It's why they have such great chemistry on screen. They are married in real life. But after Marvin went back to doing some of his breathing to calm himself down, Amber let out that scream of Uncle Marvin, and there was no way he was going to leave without finding out she was okay. He found her in a locked room, pulled the trigger on John and Rebecca, and told Amber to blame it on a white dude with tattoos, and he'll circle back around when he can. Now this is the problem with this situation. Marvin's gone and made yet another mistake by killing two people in broad daylight, where anybody could have seen him coming out the house, where they could identify a red car. He just about got away with the situation with Aaron back in 404. Law enforcement classed that death as a robbery that went wrong, and luckily Mara was actually happy to be free from Aaron. But Marvin continues to make mistakes and not learn his lesson. Most importantly, this security guard at school knows that Marvin came to get the address of Amber's foster parents. This is the loose end that might come back and haunt Marvin when it comes to this situation. There's a lot of mistakes that Marvin's made, and one of them will eventually catch up with him. Even if it isn't this one of them eventually will. But Marvin definitely shouldn't have pulled the trigger. I mean, Marvin's a gangster who does gangster shit. I personally believe he would have been able to deal with John without using his gun, even if John was holding a baseball bat. I still have Marvin winning against these two without having to pull the trigger. Now, who I really feel sorry for is Amber. She's lost her sister Alice, her mother was a junkie, and so was her father. None of her family want anything to do with Amber, and when she went into foster care, she ended up with yet another pair of junkies as foster parents, where she's also probably acting like a parent to this baby, when she's just a kid herself. But this whole situation is a complete mess for Marvin. It's the last thing he needs on top of the Italian problem, for him to be linked to a double homicide, where he can easily be placed if we have competent law enforcement who do the right digging and ask the right questions. We all know on Power, plot armor is crazy, so it may not actually amount to much, but we do have to consider all the outcomes, and we do have to ask the question, could this situation come back to haunt Marvin come the end of season 4, and could Marvin end up in handcuffs? One mistake will definitely come back to haunt him eventually, even if it's not this one. It's why we spoke about law enforcement last week. You could sense their presence was going to be playing a big role in episode 9 and 10, with Garcia and a few others. They've also got their eyes on the situation with Lou and B. Rilla, and now there could be this double homicide which could be trouble for Marvin. It's also why Andre's death was a huge blow to the Thomases. He was someone who was able to use his connections and help Marvin and Rock stay one step ahead of law enforcement, but they no longer have that. There's no Detective Howard or Andre Barnes, so big problems could be on the horizon for Marvin. That's only if law enforcement investigate this properly. So Marvin ending up in handcuffs, it is something that can't be ruled out in episode 10. With that being said, let's talk about the Ellie Tyler situation with the Italians.
Fuck you gonna do about it, Early?
Now, after Ellie Tyler did Marvin a solid by getting him Amber's information, he decided to give something back, which was Stefano's Corona operation, but this was always a ticking time bomb.
Any mistakes, I'll be looking at you, Marvin.
More recently, when he finally came clean to Rock, she told him to get rid of both Londell and Ellie Tyler. Both of them had to go for their role in the Howard Beach death. And I really don't know why Marvin just didn't listen. But that's the problem with Marvin sometimes, he don't listen. When he starts making decisions for himself and creating side hustles, we saw what happened back in season 1. Kanan cooked up the Bad Batch, bodies fell in the streets, and then he had to deal with a snitch. Marvin's side hustles never go according to plan. History has proven that from season 1. So, making this deal with Stefano behind Rock's back with Ellie Tyler, someone who was actually helping Unique in the early parts of season 4, and that's another point entirely. When will Marvin learn that Ellie Tyler was the one who was helping Unique? But things were inevitably going to go wrong, and go wrong they did, because Marvin refused to get rid of Ellie Tyler. Killing Londell and leaving Ellie Tyler alive was always going to have some blowback. It was just a question of when, not if. So I think we could all see this coming from a mile away, Ellie Tyler snitching, but it's not done yet. Stefano's people will still want someone to pay for the guy in Howard Beach. We all know how Stefano was playing between Marvin and Rock, telling Rock that Marvin came to him behind her back to take her position. With these Italians, they always want to keep their hands clean. They'll use these guys to fight their proxy wars for them. And well, we also know Ellie Tyler will want some kind of revenge for his cousin Londell. So now him and the Italians have something in common. We know the Italians also want to move Rock and Marvin out the way anyway. If they had someone to replace the Thomases, they would have done so already. They would have no qualms about getting rid of them. Maybe they do come for them in episode 10. Maybe Ellie Tyler does get the okay from Stefano to try and attack Marvin and get rid. Maybe Stefano and Phil Russo do come to a truce, and there is a peace deal which is brokered by Snaps and Pop. Snaps and Pop are some big players who can make things happen. An alliance with Unique, working under Stefano and Phil Russo under a new peace deal, could be the way they move the Thomases out the way. A deal that benefits all parties involved, from Stefano, Phil Russo, Snaps, Pop, Unique. Hafiz and the Afghan supply may then go to Unique. The synopsis teases that Rock attempts to stave off the collapse of her business as she and Lou prepare for possible war with Unique. And what did Hafiz say earlier on in season 4? The bloodiest wars were fought over territory. They won't be too impressed when Rock can't move her product. She's made some big promises. We know family is going to be fair game in episode 10. We could genuinely be in for a scenario where everybody turns on the Thomases. So whether this is Ellie Tyler or Unique coming to attack Marvin, I think it was long overdue from Unique if I'm going to be honest. We also saw Marvin doing something very similar back in season 1, and storylines in the world of power do tend to kind of mirror themselves quite a lot. So this could actually be a role reversal. This could actually be Unique coming to attack Marvin. Now in terms of Ellie Tyler, I do think he is on my death predictions for episode 10. I do think Marvin does need to get rid of him for snitching to Stefano, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he was someone who did survive heading into season 5, with the backing of Stefano and the Italians, and possibly even Unique. He might actually be someone who Marvin can't easily get rid of. There are so many problems for Marvin heading into the final episode for season 4, and where we speak about things firing at Rock from every single direction, we can genuinely say the same about Marvin. With that being said, I can also see a situation where Marvin is seriously wounded or injured come the end of season 4, and where they leave his plot and storyline as a question: is Marvin dead or alive? Will he survive after taking a hell of a lot of gunfire? I do think he will still survive. I think he'll play a big role in season 5, but that's another scenario they could definitely run with, where he's completely out of action for months. I previously mentioned the timing of Lou's return to being Rock's right hand man is the perfect timing, because she can't rely on Marvin at this moment in time. When it comes to things like this, 100%, we've all heard Marvin say it before, he's a gangster who does gangster shit, but at the end of the day he's also human, and we have also seen him be stabbed or grazed with a blade by Aaron before. They're warning us, Marvin is human. So could Marvin be forced to lay low for a while where he's out of action because he's taken 1 or 2 bullets, and where they leave the question open-ended heading into season 5? Does he survive? I can definitely see them doing that for Marvin, especially if he is out of action for a few months or so. Imagine what that would do to Duke, how she may have to step up in his absence, how Lou will have to step up in his absence. So definitely a lot of scenarios that they could run with Marvin's character. The Amber situation, law enforcement, Marvin having to lay low because of the Italians, going back for revenge on Ellie Tyler, or even taking a few bullets himself where he's out of action for a while, where Duke and Lou have to step up for Rock. They're all definitely on the cards. But that's where we are with Marvin's story arc up to episode 409, heading into the final episode for season 4. There are a few loose ends that do need to be tied up, that may even come back to haunt him, and I think we know he has to deal with Ellie Tyler and his people before they come for him. Or are they about to hit Marvin first? And could that situation with Amber's foster parents come back and haunt him? Could he end up in handcuffs? But the floor is now yours. Let me know what you think happens with Marvin heading into the final episode for season 4. Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.